Hi everyone, welcome to MOHIvate. I'm Dr. Mohi Sarawgee, a GP by profession, curious like all of you, and constantly on a journey of hope. But here, I'm swapping prescriptions for perspective. With a little science, a little warmth, and a touch of humor, these episodes are meant to be a short pause in your week, just gentle reminders that health can feel simple and that life doesn't always have to feel so overwhelming. So, whether you're on your commute, at the gym, juggling chaos, or even doom scrolling late at night, this space is for you. Now, as a GP, I hear it all, and I mean all. From doctor, my knee hurts, to my head buzzes like there's a beehive in there. And then there are the non medical confessions. My boss is toxic, my spouse is emotionally unavailable, my in laws have no boundaries, and my teenager only speaks in emojis. Honestly, some days my consultation room feels part clinic, part coffee shop, part therapy couch. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I love my work and I love my patients because I learn so much from them. And here's the thing, language keeps surprising me. Once a teenage patient before signing off said, "Doctor, you ate that consultation." I didn't know whether to thank them, so I just smiled graciously and took it as a compliment, which luckily it was. Then, after they left, I quietly Googled the phrase. Apparently, you ate that means you really did well. Still a compliment, just one that now comes with subtitles. It made me think words change meaning all the time. Not long ago, we'd call toddlers cute as a cupcake or a little muffin because that's what we said when someone was adorable. Say that next to a teenager now, and they'll choke laughing. Apparently, these days calling someone a dessert is officially cringe. And that got me thinking, if simple words like lit and cupcake can change so much, imagine what's happened to the big ones. The psychology buzzwords we hear every day: narcissism, gaslighting, boundaries, trauma, even triggered and avoidant. Today, we are going to unpack two of them in detail: narcissism and gaslighting. Why am I a GP talking about this? Because there's nothing general about general practice. We don't just see coughs and colds, we see everything from backaches to broken hearts, from newborn babies to the elderly, right up to the moment we help someone rest in peace. One of the most fascinating rotations I did during my postgraduate training was psychiatry. It gave me a window into the human mind, not just the disorders, but the everyday struggles, the words we use to describe them, and sometimes the words we misuse. Words have power. They shape how we understand ourselves, they shape how we connect or disconnect from each other. And lately, some psychological buzzwords have taken on lives of their own. I hear them everywhere, in consultations with patients, in chats with my friends in midlife, and even from my niece who speaks fluent Gen Z. Sometimes I feel like I need a translator. So, yes, language shifts with generations. But words like narcissist, gaslighting, and boundaries have taken on lives of their own. And if we don't pause to understand them, we risk confusing ordinary human ups and downs with clinical psychology. And that confusion doesn't just cause arguments, it feeds real problems: anxiety, depression, miscommunication, burnout, relationship strain, even loneliness. So today, let's put these words under the microscope. Where did they come from? What do they really mean? And why does it matter when we misuse them? Let's start with narcissism, and often right next to it comes another word: Gaslighting. It's no wonder that Merriam-Webster named gaslighting its word of the year in 2022. The two are related, but not the same. One blurs your sense of self, the other blurs your sense of reality. And somewhere in between, we've blurred the language too. As many stories do, this one begins with the Greeks. There was a handsome hunter named Narcissus who was said to be so beautiful that one day, while wandering through the forest, he came upon a still, clear pool of water. When he leaned over to take a drink, he saw his reflection for the first time. He didn't realize it was his own image. He thought it was someone else, someone divine, and he fell in love with what he saw. He sat by the water's edge, unable to look away, so consumed and lost in his own reflection that days passed, then weeks, until finally he faded away. The gods, feeling both pity and irony, transformed him into a flower, the narcissus, which still bends its delicate head towards the water, forever gazing at its own reflection. From that story, we get the word narcissism, which means love of one's own image. It's poetic, really. The myth was never about excessive pride or manipulation. Narcissus didn't harm anyone. He simply fell in love with his own image, not realizing it was his. He loved what he saw, but he couldn't see beyond himself. It's not the love that destroys him, it's the blindness. And maybe that's something to think about even today. The danger isn't in loving yourself, it's when that love stops being love and starts becoming hunger. When you stop being nourished by your reflection and start needing others to reflect you back. Brighter, shinier, more adored. That's when admiration becomes addiction, not connection, but craving. And that shift from admiration to dependence is where psychology steps in. The person who gave narcissism a psychological meaning was a man named Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. In 1914, Freud published an essay called On Narcissism, an Introduction. In the essay, he said that babies begin life in a state of primary narcissism, a kind of total self-absorption. They believe they are the center of the universe. And honestly, they are. Try telling a newborn they are not in charge. They cry, food appears. They giggle, the whole room applauds. That early self-focus is survival, not vanity. But Freud went further. He said a touch of narcissism is actually healthy. It fuels ambition, self-esteem, and even love. Without it, you'd collapse into self-doubt. It's the quiet inner voice that says, I can do this. It's what helps you apply for a job, take a risk, fall in love. Without it, we crumble. With too much of it, we stop hearing anyone else. So here's the twist. Narcissism as a trait isn't always bad. In fact, the healthiest version of it is what we now call self-love. Before we go further, let's set the record straight. The word narcissism gets thrown around a lot, so here's a simple guide. Self-love is healthy. It's the ability to value yourself without devaluing others. It's what lets you set boundaries, rest, and say, I matter and so do you. Narcissistic traits are everyday tendencies. The occasional need to be admired, to post the selfie, to win the praise. We all have them. Narcissistic Personality Disorder, or NPD, is when those traits become rigid and harmful. When admiration turns into entitlement, empathy disappears, and other people are treated as extensions, not equals. That's the line between human and clinical. Let's take a moment to make this practical. Self love says, I matter and so do you. Narcissism as a trait says, I matter little more than you, but it's nothing personal. Narcissistic Personality Disorder says, only I matter, you don't matter at all. That's the spectrum. Between self doubt and self absorption lies healthy confidence, the kind that gets you through Mondays, lets you share your ideas, and reminds you that you're worthy of love. Too little of it, and you burn out. Too much of it, and you burn bridges. Here's what that looks like in real life, because sometimes the clearest way to understand psychology is to see it play out in everyday moments. Self love, you buy yourself flowers because they make you happy. Narcissism as a trait, you post the flowers on Instagram and refresh 27 times to see who liked them. NPD, you demand everyone in the house admire your flowers and rage if they don't. Now let's take this from everyday life to clinical understanding. What happens when these traits stop being flexible and start causing real harm? When narcissistic traits become fixed and start damaging relationships, we cross into Narcissistic Personality Disorder or NPD, known for emotional intensity and unstable relationships. And those relationships can take any form: parent and child, partners, siblings, colleagues, even friendships. Clinically, NPD is defined as a long term pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. Now, grandiosity doesn't just mean thinking highly of yourself, it's believing you are exceptional, that ordinary rules don't apply to you. NPD isn't about confidence or charisma, it's about control, about needing to feel superior, even when it hurts the people closest to you. People living with NPD often appear magnetic, confident, and persuasive. But beneath that charm lies fragile self worth, a sense of self so dependent on admiration that even mild criticism can feel like humiliation. And that's when defensive patterns kick in: blame, denial, or rage. In close relationships, this often plays out as a cycle. First comes idealization. You're perfect, you're special, you're adored. Then, as reality sets in, comes devaluation. Suddenly, you're not good enough. One day, you're the love of their life, the next, you're invisible. This pattern can leave partners and families anxious, isolated, and doubting their own reality. In its more severe forms, NPD can include gaslighting, which we'll talk about in a moment, emotional manipulation, and psychological abuse. And this is not always out of cruelty, but often out of desperation to stay in control, to feel superior, and to protect that fragile sense of worth and self importance. Clinicians often say the paradox of NPD is this: it isn't about too much self love, it's about too little stable self worth. Without a steady inner sense of value, the person depends entirely on how others see them. Admiration becomes oxygen, criticism becomes poison. And when admiration fades, they may lash out, withdraw, or look for new sources of validation. The reported prevalence of NPD is around 1% of the population, but it's likely higher because people with true NPD rarely recognize it as a problem. They don't often seek help until something collapses, a job, a relationship, or their world around them. If you are dealing with someone who might have true NPD, please don't handle it alone. Speak to your GP or a mental health professional. And if you ever feel unsafe, reach out to a local mental health or domestic abuse helpline. I have added a list of support lines in the episode notes. Countries may differ, but always keep these helpline numbers handy with you on your phone. And for the friends and families listening, if you notice patterns of control, manipulation, or cruelty, please encourage both sides to seek help. Because these patterns don't just affect one person, they affect everyone around them. When NPD goes untreated, the emotional aftershocks can ripple through entire homes, workplaces, and families. Remember this: diagnosing NPD requires a psychiatrist, not a scroll through social media. Not every jerk is a narcissist, and not every narcissist has NPD. Narcissism is a trait. NPD is a personality disorder. One makes you vain, the other can make you harmful. Here's one more way to understand it. Self love is saying, I deserve to rest, I'm going to take a nap. Narcissism as a trait is saying, I deserve to nap while you do all the housework. NPD is saying, you're lucky I even let you live in this house while I nap. Narcissism becomes unhealthy the moment your self love stops including empathy for others. Because real love, even for yourself, always has room for someone else. And that brings us to a behavior that often appears alongside narcissism: gaslighting. If narcissism is about falling in love with your own reflection, gaslighting is about making someone else doubt theirs. It's one of the most subtle and devastating forms of emotional manipulation. Where narcissism blurs your sense of self, gaslighting blurs your sense of reality. It starts quietly, a shift in tone here, a contradiction there, and you find yourself thinking, wait, did that really happen? Did I overreact? Moments of certainty turn into self doubt. Your memory, your emotions, even your instincts start to feel unreliable. Now, before you panic, we all gaslight a little sometimes. We smooth over awkward moments to keep the peace. You're not mad, are you? It wasn't that bad. Those are normal human defenses, small ways we soften discomfort or avoid confrontation. But true gaslighting, that's something entirely different. It's not about a single lie or argument. It's a sustained pattern of psychological manipulation designed to make someone question their perception, their emotions, even their sanity. It's the difference between I didn't mean to hurt you and that never happened, you're imagining it. The word gaslighting has one of my favorite origin stories. It comes from a 1938 play later made into a film called Gaslight. It's still available on YouTube to watch. In it, a husband slowly manipulates his wife into believing she's losing her mind. He dims the gas lamps in their home, then denies it when she notices. Over time, she begins to doubt her own senses, her sight, her memory, her grasp on reality. That's where the term comes from. And honestly, it's chilling how accurate it still feels today. Because modern gaslighting doesn't need flickering lamps, it just needs a little doubt. A person who says, you're imagining things, you're too sensitive, you're crazy, everyone thinks so. One denial at a time, Your trust in yourself starts to flicker. Gaslighting can happen anywhere, in relationships, at work, even in families. A boss forgets a deadline and says, "You never told me that." A partner flirts openly, then says, "You're paranoid." A parent insists, "We never said that. You always exaggerate." One or two moments like this doesn't mean you're being gaslit. Everyone misremembers sometimes. But when it becomes a pattern, when one person's version of reality always wins, that's when it becomes psychological abuse. Gaslighting slowly erodes your sense of self. You start apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You question your memory, your reactions, your worth. You begin to edit yourself before you even speak, just to keep the peace. And eventually, you start believing the problem is you. As a GP, I've seen people come in saying, "I think I'm losing my mind," when really what they are losing is their confidence, one small doubt at a time. At its core, gaslighting works because it creates cognitive dissonance. The mind struggle to hold two conflicting truths. When someone tells you that never happened, your brain has to choose. Do I trust my memory or this person I love, depend on, or respect? Over time, love wins, logic loses, and the ground beneath you disappears. That's the cruel genius of gaslighting. It doesn't break you all at once, it makes you question you. If you constantly feel confused, apologetic, or like you're overreacting, pause. You might be in a gaslighting dynamic. Here are a few red flags. You second guess your memory after every disagreement. You feel the need to prove what really happened. You apologize constantly, even when you've done nothing wrong. You dread confrontation because it always ends up being your fault. If this sounds familiar, it's not oversensitivity. It's a learned response to manipulation. The first step is to trust your own perception again. Write things down. Talk to a trusted friend or family member. Therapy can help you rebuild the part of yourself that's been chipped away, your confidence in your own reality. Reality checking isn't paranoia, it's protection. If you're listening and something about this feels uncomfortably familiar, please know you're not crazy and you're not alone. Gaslighting can happen to anyone. Now that we've unpacked what these words really mean, it's worth remembering something. Words like narcissist and gaslighting have become part of everyday talk, popping up in captions, arguments, and memes. But these words describe patterns that cause real pain and real trauma. When we toss them around casually, we blur the line between a bad day and a disorder, between a misunderstanding and abuse, between being human and being harmful. And when we do that, we not only dilute the meaning, we also risk minimizing the experience of people who've lived through it. So maybe the takeaway isn't just about spotting these traits in others, it's about how we speak. Because language shapes how we see people and how we see ourselves. And maybe that's the thread that runs through both narcissism and gaslighting. They both begin when love loses sight of itself. One gets trapped in its own reflection, the other tries to dim someone else's light. On a lighter note, at the end of the day, love does it. The love of a parent, a child, a partner, or even the quiet kind you give yourself on days when you feel small. Someone once said, love is blind. And maybe they were right. Narcissus was too. But the difference is, love eventually sees. It looks up. It looks out. It connects. So maybe the real reflection worth falling in love with isn't the one in the mirror. It's the one you learn to see in yourself again. And then the one reflected back in the eyes of someone who truly sees you. I hope something today stirred a thought, gave you a smile, or simply made you pause. Whatever time it is where you are, I hope you carry a little feel-good factor with you. Thank you for listening. I'm Dr. Mohi. Until next time, stay motivated. May the mirrors you meet show you kindness, and may your love for yourself and others always bring you back home.